So I messed up big time, and now everything is falling apart. 3 months ago, I got my high school girlfriend pregnant. Yeah, I know. Stupid, right? We weren't even planning for this, it just happened. I thought we were careful, but I guess not careful enough. And now I've been hiding it from my parents, thinking maybe I could figure something out before they found out. But guess what? They found out, and now they want to disown me. If they do, I lose my chance to go to college. I don't even know how they found out. Maybe her parents told them, or maybe someone at school overheard and snitched. Doesn't matter now. What matters is that the second they knew, all hell broke loose. My dad was furious. My mom, she just cried. They kept saying how I ruined my future, how they worked so hard to give me a better life, and I just threw it away. I tried to explain, but what was I supposed to say? Oh, sorry, it was a mistake? That doesn't change anything. And then there's my girlfriend. Her parents are just as mad, but in a different way. They're making her keep the baby, but they don't want her to raise it. Adoption? That's their big plan. Just give it away and pretend this never happened. But how do you pretend something like this never happened? I mean, that's my kid, our kid, and they're acting like it's just some problem they can ship off to someone else. I'm at a complete loss. If my parents kick me out, I lose my shot at college, and college was supposed to be my way out of all this. I had everything planned, get my degree, get a good job, build a future. And now I might not even have a home in a few days. And what about the baby? Do I even have a say in any of this? Her parents are making decisions like I don't exist, but I do, and I care. I don't know if I'm ready to be a dad, but I do know I can't just pretend this never happened. How do I just let go of my own child? Everything feels impossible right now. I don't even know what to do. Do I fight my parents? Do I beg them not to kick me out? Do I fight her parents to let me be part of the decision? Or do I just give up and accept whatever happens? I need a plan, but I don't have one. And time is running out. I barely slept after my parents found out. My dad didn't even look at me the next morning. My mom just walked past me like I didn't exist. It was like I wasn't even their son anymore. I didn't know what to do, so I just went to school like everything was normal. But nothing was normal. At school, my girlfriend wouldn't even talk to me. I get it. She's under pressure too. Her parents are forcing her to have the baby and then give it up for adoption. She doesn't even get a choice. And me? I don't get a say in anything. Not with my parents, not with hers, not with the baby. I'm just stuck in the middle while everybody else makes decisions. When I got home that day, my dad was waiting for me. He just said, "Pack your things, that's it." No argument, no yelling. Just those 3 words, and I knew he meant it. My heart just dropped. I asked him where I was supposed to go, but he didn't care. He said if I was old enough to get a girl pregnant, I was old enough to figure it out. I begged my mom to talk to him, to give me another chance, but she just shook her head. She said they warned me about this, that they told me to focus on my future, not on girls, that I didn't listen, and now I had to deal with the consequences. I didn't even know where to go. I packed a bag with some clothes, my phone, and whatever money I had. I thought about going to a friend's house, but who was going to let me stay? Everyone's parents knew what happened. The second I walked out of my house, I felt like my life was over. And the worst part? My girlfriend texted me that night saying she didn't want to talk for a while. She said her parents were making things worse and she needed space. I wanted to be mad, but I wasn't. I just felt empty. First, my parents kicked me out. Now she didn't even want me around. I slept in a park that night, just sat on a bench with my hoodie up, trying to keep warm. I don't even know how I fell asleep, but I did. And when I woke up, reality hit me all over again. No home, no support, no plan. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Waking up in that park was one of the worst feelings ever. I was cold, hungry, and had no idea what to do next. I kept thinking, is this really my life now? Just a few days ago, I was worried about college applications and prom. Now I'm basically homeless. I checked my phone, barely any battery left. My girlfriend hadn't texted back. My parents didn't care where I was. And my friends? I don't even know if I could call them that anymore. No one reached out. Maybe they were scared of their parents finding out. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved. Either way, I was on my own. I needed a place to stay, at least for a few days. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went to my uncle's house. He's my dad's younger brother, and he's always been the cool uncle, the one who sneaks you beers at family BBQs and tells you stories about how wild he used to be. I figured if anyone would understand, it'd be him. When he opened the door, he looked surprised. I hadn't even told him what happened yet, but he could tell something was wrong. I asked if I could stay with him for a bit. He just sighed and let me in. I told him everything. How my parents kicked me out, how my girlfriend's parents were making her give up the baby, how I had nowhere to go. He just shook his head and said, "Damn, kid, you really messed up." Yeah, no kidding. He let me crash on his couch, but he made it clear. This wasn't a long-term thing. He said he'd give me a week, maybe 2, but after that I had to figure something out. He told me I should try to fix things with my parents, that they didn't really mean it when they kicked me out, but I wasn't so sure. My dad doesn't make empty threats. I texted my girlfriend again, just asking if she was okay. No response. I don't know if she was ignoring me or if her parents took her phone, but either way, I felt completely shut out. Then, later that night, I got a text from her mom. My heart dropped. She just said, "We need to talk. Come to the house tomorrow." That was it. No details, nothing. Just that. I had no idea what they wanted, but I knew it couldn't be good. The next morning, I woke up feeling sick. Not because I was actually sick, but because I knew I had to go to my girlfriend's house. Her mom's text was still sitting on my phone, and I kept staring at it, trying to figure out what she was going to say. Was she going to tell me to stay away from her daughter? Was she going to threaten me? Was she going to tell me they'd already found a family to adopt the baby? I had no idea. My uncle was already up when I left. He didn't ask where I was going, just said, "Be smart, kid." I nodded and walked out. I didn't even have money for a bus, so I walked the whole way there. My stomach empty, my mind racing. When I got to the house, I stood outside for a minute, trying to gather myself. Then I knocked. My girlfriend's mom opened the door and just stared at me for a second. "No hello, no come in." Just that look. You know the look. The one that says, "You are the reason my life is a disaster right now." She finally stepped aside and let me in. My girlfriend's dad was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. And then I saw my girlfriend. She was sitting in the corner, arms wrapped around her stomach, eyes puffy like she'd been crying all night. She wouldn't even look at me. Then her mom started talking. She said they had already made a decision. The baby was going up. For adoption, no discussion. She said it was the best thing for everyone. Me, my girlfriend, the baby. She said we were too young, too irresponsible, and we couldn't provide for a child. I tried to say something, but her dad cut me off. He said I had no say in this, that this was their daughter, their grandchild, their decision. And then my girlfriend finally spoke. Her voice was shaky, and she wouldn't look up, but she said, "I don't want to do this." Her mom looked like she had just been slapped. She turned to her and said, "We already talked about this." My girlfriend just shook her head and repeated, "I don't want to do this." I was shocked. I thought she had agreed with them. I thought she had already given up. But now I realized she was just scared. Her mom got up and left the room, slamming the door behind her. Her dad just sat there, shaking his head. And me? I didn't know what to do. If her parents were against us and my parents had already thrown me out, where did that leave us? When I left that house, I felt more lost than ever. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that happened at my girlfriend's house. Her mom was still trying to push the adoption, but it was clear my girlfriend wasn't on the same page. I kept replaying that moment in my head, where she said she didn't want to do this. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it made me wonder if there was a way to change things. Maybe if we fought for the baby, we could still make it work. But how? And with who? I spent hours thinking about my next move, but nothing came to mind. I couldn't even call my parents for help, at least not yet. They were still pissed at me. I'm sure they wouldn't have cared if I called, but I wasn't ready to deal with them yet. It would feel like admitting defeat. I sent my girlfriend another text, telling her that I was ready to do whatever it took. I didn't care about the baby being born or put up for adoption. I just didn't want to lose her and the baby. I said I wanted to be a part of it, all of it. But, like before, she didn't respond. I knew she was probably getting pressure from her parents. Maybe she was just avoiding me, so she didn't have to explain things. The next morning, my uncle sat me down and gave me a little bit of advice. He said I needed to figure out where I stood with my parents. If I kept avoiding them, nothing would ever get better. I hated the idea of going back, but I knew he was right. If I was going to have any chance at getting my life back on track, I had to try. So, I did it. I called my mom. She answered, but she sounded distant. I told her everything, how I was staying at my uncle's place, and how things with my girlfriend were still up in the air. I told her I was sorry for messing everything up, and that I'd do whatever I could to fix it, and she just said, "You have to figure this out, but we can't keep pretending like nothing happened. We don't know what to do with you right now." That hurt. But then she told me something that made my heart sink. "Your dad's not even talking to me. I don't know what to do anymore. It's hard to forgive you for this." That was it. The door was still closed, and I didn't know how to open it. I hung up the phone feeling like a failure, but I didn't want to give up. I had to find a way back. For my future. For the baby. For everything. I couldn't just sit back anymore. I needed a plan, but I had no idea what that plan was yet. The days after that phone call with my mom were some of the hardest of my life. My dad still wouldn't talk to me, and my mom, well, she didn't exactly sound like she was in my corner either. I felt like I was getting further and further from the family I used to know, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. I'd messed up, but knowing that they were done with me made everything so much worse. How I spent the next couple of days at my uncle's, just keeping to myself, trying to come up with a plan. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was running out of options. My girlfriend wouldn't talk to me. Her parents were dead set on the adoption, and my parents, they were barely acknowledging my existence. I tried reaching out to a few friends, but honestly, I didn't even know what to say. "Hey, so I got my girlfriend pregnant, and now everyone's mad at me. Can I crash at your place?" Yeah, that wasn't going to work. So I stayed quiet. One night, though, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my girlfriend. "We need to talk. Come over after school." I didn't even hesitate. I got out of the house as fast as I could and made my way to her place. I didn't even care about anything else. I just needed to hear her say something. Anything. When I got there, her parents weren't home. I thought that was a good sign, but when I saw her sitting on the couch, I knew it wasn't. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't been sleeping. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the floor. I sat down next to her, but we didn't touch. It was like everything was so tense between us now. I waited for her to say something, but she stayed silent. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know what to do anymore." I felt like I had to do something, but I didn't know what. "We can figure this out," I said. "I know things are messed up right now, but I want to be here for you. I want to be here for the baby." She shook her head. "My parents already made it clear what they want. They won't let me keep it. They say I'm too young. They're forcing me into adoption. That's when I realized how much control they had over her, how little say she had in the matter. It killed me. She wasn't even being given a choice. I grabbed her hand, desperate. You don't have to listen to them. We can do this together. We're both scared, but we can figure it out. She pulled her hand away, but it wasn't harsh. More like she didn't want me to see how broken she was. You don't understand. My parents don't care what I want. They're already making arrangements for the adoption. I'm not even allowed to make the decision. It's like they're treating me like I don't exist. I could see it now. She was just as trapped as I was. We were both being forced into these decisions like we didn't matter. The baby didn't matter. I'll fight for you, I said, my voice shaking. I'll fight for us. You don't have to do this. She wiped away a tear, and for a second it looked like she was going to say something, but then the door opened. Her mom walked in, and she looked at both of us with that cold stare. I'd seen it so many times before, but now it felt different, like she was an enemy. I told you to stay away from her, she said to me. You're not welcome here. I'm making sure she has this baby and gives it up for adoption, and you're not going to stop it. I stood up, my heart racing. You don't get to make this decision for her. Her mom stepped closer. Watch me. You don't know what's best for her. You don't even know what's best for yourself. I looked at my girlfriend, and for a split second I saw that she wasn't on her mom's side, but she didn't speak up. She just sat there, her head down. I couldn't do this anymore. I had to walk away or I would lose everything. Her, the baby, any chance I had left of getting my life back. I left without saying another word. I thought leaving her house would make things clearer, but it didn't. If anything, it just made everything feel even more tangled up. I was mad at her mom. I was mad at my girlfriend for not fighting harder. I was mad at myself for putting us in this position in the first place. But more than anything, I was just tired. Tired of fighting, tired of the lies, tired of the endless pressure from both sides. I wanted to be the one to fix things, but I didn't know how. My mom still wouldn't talk to me. My dad still refused to acknowledge me. And my girlfriend's parents, they were doubling down on the adoption, pushing her into a decision she wasn't ready to make. That night, I sat in my uncle's living room, staring at my phone. I wanted to text her. I wanted to tell her that I would wait for her, that I wouldn't give up. But then I thought about her parents, her future, and how everything felt like it was falling apart. I didn't send the text. The next morning, I got a call from my mom. I didn't expect her to call, so when I saw her name pop up on my phone, I hesitated. For a second, I almost didn't answer. But then I thought, maybe this is the moment she's ready to talk. I picked up. What do you want, Mom? My voice came out sharper than I meant, but it felt like she was the last person who could understand me right now. Don't talk to me like that, she said. I'm trying to help you. Help me? I didn't feel like she was trying to help me. I felt like she was still punishing me. But I kept my cool. I don't know how much more you want me to apologize. I'm sorry, okay? But I need you to understand something. I'm not walking away from this. I can't. Not from the baby, and not from her. There was a long pause on the other end of the phone. I could almost hear her trying to decide whether to believe me. Finally, she spoke. Your father and I can't help you right now. We can't pretend like nothing happened. But I'm not going to disown you. You still have a chance at college, but it's up to you to figure out what you're going to do next. You can't keep running from your responsibilities. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me wanted to scream at her for saying it wasn't nothing. This wasn't some mistake I made and could just walk away from. But the other part of me was just relieved that she wasn't completely cutting me out. I'll try, Mom. I'll try to fix things. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, she said. But if you want to get back on track, you have to stop pretending like you're helpless. She hung up, and I sat there for a long time, just holding my phone, thinking about what she said. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been acting helpless. But what could I do when everyone around me was making decisions for me? The next few days were a blur. I spent some time just reflecting on what had happened, trying to make sense of everything. I kept thinking about my girlfriend and how she had been pushed into a corner by her parents. I thought about the baby and how everything seemed to be spiraling out of control. I went back to her house. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew I couldn't just sit by anymore. Her parents weren't home, but she was. This time, though, she was waiting for me. She looked at me when I walked in, and for the first time in a while, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I talked to my parents," she said quietly. "I told them I don't want to give up the baby. I don't want to do this alone." My heart skipped a beat. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? "I don't know if we can make it work," she continued. "But I can't just let them control everything. I don't want to lose the baby or you." I didn't know what to say at first. All I could do was pull her into a hug and promise her I wouldn't give up. I didn't know what would happen next. We both still had so many obstacles ahead of us. But for the first time, I felt like we were both finally on the same page. The weeks that followed were a blur, but in a good way. After that conversation with my girlfriend, things started to change. Slowly, but they were changing. Her parents didn't like it, not one bit. But my girlfriend and I had agreed that we wouldn't let them dictate our lives anymore. She still lived under their roof, but we both started taking control of what we could. We researched our options for keeping the baby and what the adoption process looked like. We met with some counselors who explained everything, and for the first time, I felt like we were really making decisions together. It wasn't easy. I couldn't just go back to my old life. I was still living at my uncle's house, and I knew my parents were still angry with me. My dad wasn't ready to talk yet, but my mom, she was softening a little. She would check in on me sometimes, offering advice on how to move forward. It wasn't much, but it was enough for me to know she still cared. One night, my mom called. It was a rare thing these days. "Your dad and I are going to be in town this weekend," she said. "We thought we'd stop by for the baby, for you." I didn't even know what to say. The idea of them coming to see me and the baby felt so unreal. I didn't know if they were ready for that kind of commitment yet, but I was willing to take whatever I could get. The weekend came and they actually showed up at my uncle's house. It was awkward at first, like everyone was trying to find their place in this new reality. But eventually we sat down and talked. I told them about our plans, about how we were moving forward with keeping the baby. They didn't say much at first. I could see the shock in their eyes, the confusion. But after a long silence, my mom spoke. "You're going to need a lot of help," she said. "I know," I said. "We're working on it." And we were. My girlfriend's parents weren't thrilled, but they had reluctantly agreed to let us make our own decisions. They had threatened to stop supporting her, but deep down, I think they knew that if they pushed too hard, they'd lose her for good. So, for now, we were doing it on our own terms. It wasn't perfect. It was messy. There were days when I still felt completely lost, days when I questioned if we were doing the right thing. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I was going to be there for her. I was going to be there for our baby. And somehow I was going to get my life back together. And then the unexpected happened. I got a letter from the college I applied to. It was a thick envelope, which could either be a rejection or an acceptance. My heart was pounding as I opened it, but I didn't even have to read the whole thing. The word accepted was in bold letters. I was going to college. It felt like the weight of the world had lifted off my shoulders. I had a future. It was going to be hard, but I had a future. I had a chance to do something with my life, to fix the mess I'd made. When I told my girlfriend the news, she smiled, really smiled, for the first time in a long while. It felt like we were both moving forward, even if just a little bit. Things weren't perfect. My relationship with my parents wasn't fully repaired, but it was a start. My girlfriend's parents were still keeping their distance, but we were figuring it out one step at a time. And the baby, we still had a long way to go, but I knew we were going to make it work. We were going to raise our child together. So, yeah, I guess things didn't turn out how I expected. But maybe that's the point. Life doesn't always give you the path you think you deserve. It gives you what you need to grow, even if it's the hardest thing you've ever faced. And somehow that's okay.